All right, well, welcome everybody. This is going to be our Q2 public safety update. I know many of you have attended these before and kind of understand the order of business today, but if this is your first time, welcome. We started these a number of years ago to give you an overlook of what crime and what we are doing about crime is, how that's looking in South Bend. So you're going to see a number of slides today talking about some of our stats from the last quarter, and you're also going to see some of the things that we're doing about it. You don't need to worry about miking me up. I'm just doing an introduction. These are going to be the important folks. So before we get into it, this is kind of how it's going to work today. Dive deeper into strategies, and we're going to talk about some events. Before I start talking about some of those events coming up, I'm going to turn it over to the table here for some introductions and some introductory comments. I understand that the last 24 hours in South Bend, there have been some incidents that have made the news. We'd be happy to talk about those. Today is focusing on Q2, so we can talk about that further at the end after we get through the Q2 data. And if certainly the mayor or the chiefs or Captain Miller want to talk about that, they can as well. But without further ado, I will let them introduce themselves and we'll get started.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Assistant Chief Dan Skibins.
James Mueller, Mayor of South Bend.
Scott Ruszkowski, South Bend Police Chief.
Kayla Miller, Captain of the South Bend Police Department Detective Bureau and Michigan Crime Stoppers.
Mayor, Chief, do you have any opening remarks you'd like to make before we get into some of our events?
We'll just make a brief one. As you guys know, I think a lot of you have been here in the past, so you'll be familiar with the format and the data we're going over. You'll also know that we've been tracking our trends over a number of years, and in 2024 and 2025 was the lowest violent gun shooting violence in the city in many decades. You know, also, if you were here in quarter one, we saw a slight uptick, still below our 5-year average, but an uptick from the past couple of years. What you'll find today is quarter two was a substantial improvement from quarter one. And so by the end of quarter two, which is through June, the end of June, the number of shooting victims was equal to the prior year. So that's where we are. Obviously, in some ways, you know, the what happens in the moment shapes our perceptions, but that's especially why we want to look at the data, not just quarter by quarter, but over a number of years, and that's the good news of where we are. But of course, the past 24 hours, our team has been busy. Chief?
Yeah, so on that note, the last 5 years, we have all but 2 months in 5 years, we have seen a reduction in Part 1 crimes. Every month I give those numbers to the Board of Safety. It's always on our Transparency Hub, and people can either look at what's happening currently or go back the last several years to look at that. Again, you know, we average just over 100,000 calls a year in South Bend, and those Part 1 crimes have reduced every single month but 2 in 5 years. I just want to, I know there's actual, and I know the accusations have been out there about manipulating numbers. We do not manipulate anything. This is actual required reporting through the Department of Justice and the FBI statistics. We do it the right way. We were the first to do it in this entire area, actually in the state. And if other agencies are doing the same thing we are, then maybe they need to look at how that is occurring within their jurisdictions. We have a very robust and vetting process that we go through. It's not just sworn officers, it's non-sworn civilians that are looking at these numbers, and no sworn officer is putting out those numbers before I put them out to the Board of Safety, to the Merit Board, to the Health and Public Safety Committee on the Council. So those are all numbers that anybody can see at any time, up to and including the most recent drone flight pass that we have.
Okay, and we'll get into that in a little bit. A couple announcements before we get into the data today. Our Fall Citizens Police Academy is scheduled to begin August 11th. We have a couple of seats left. I know a couple of you in this room have taken the academy, and it is always a very popular event for our department. So we have a couple spots left. We'll close that as soon as it fills up, but I would anticipate that would be by the end of the week. and the link to do so is on our website and our social media page. Also, shout out about our our shoulder patch coloring contest, kind of a tongue twister. The submissions for that are due at 11 p.m. tonight, so we will put all of those drawings on our Facebook page. Our community will vote on its favorite, and then it will turn into an actual embroidered shoulder patch that people can purchase, and it will benefit either our outreach program or the Santa's Officers program. National Night Out is coming up this Tuesday. That's just going to be in our parking lot here over by the Detective Bureau. That's going to be 5:30 to 7:30. I know a lot of the people in this room will be here, and we'll be happy to welcome here for free food, fun games, all sorts of stuff. It's something we look forward to every year. And with that, I will turn it over to Chief Skibins.
Thank you for the slide. I just have one quick slide before I pass it right back on down to Chief Ruszkowski to give you an update on our hiring and recruitment so far in this year and quarter two. We now have 248 sworn police officers. We have hired 8 recruits. They've been on the payroll for about a month now. They're leaving for the academy soon. They'll be sworn in on our police department in December, possibly November, but usually it pushes into December based on their graduation date from the Northern Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. We have had 4 individuals leave either through retirement or resignation in this quarter. So sitting at a comfortable number at 248 and hope to expand upon that with the 8 new hires. Looking at the future, we don't have officers signed up for drop. I know that there's one, but we don't have any resignations that we foresee coming in the next 2 quarters. And with that, I'll pass it back on to Chief Skibins.
Yep. So the next slide, we have our gun violence snapshot. You look in the first category, gun violence incidents, 272. It was 290 at the same period last year, so there's just over a 6% reduction there. Our criminal assault shootings, those remain the same as they were in the previous year. Those do not account for accidental, intentional self-inflicted suicides, and the next couple slides may get a little bit muddied, but hopefully between Kayla and I, we can clarify some things, because I know the questions will come up, and we will do that. We recovered 309 firearms. We had 279 recovered at the same time period last year. That was just over almost an 11% increase. The next slide I'm going to leave up here for you to peruse for a while, and I'm going to let the mayor kick this one off. And
well, this is what I mentioned up top. You see the drastic reduction over the 5-year period, specifically those in the post-pandemic years, 24, 25, and even going back to the 23 was a historically good period, a 3-year period. For us, obviously, we want to get to 0. We don't want to have any senseless deaths or gun violence in our community, but the trends have been going in the right direction. We saw a bit of an uptick earlier in the year, in the first quarter, and then since the second quarter did not had a reduction of violence, that it's the same as at the end of June, the same as 2025 through quarter 2. And that's a testament to the team, a testament to our community, and a lot of the strategies we're working together. And if we can continue this through the end of the year, and that's a big if, but if we can continue this through the end of the year, this would be a historic accomplishment in the sense that every other time there's been 1 year where it dips down to historic levels, there's usually a bounce back the next year. And so we did not see that in 25 from 24. And so far we haven't seen that this year to 25.
Yeah, I think with the actual gun violence deaths that occurred, we were at 5 total. 4 of them were from the first quarter, but we're just giving you the up to date, the most recent. So I just want to be clear on that. If you couldn't tell by the graph, and you all should have a copy of this presentation. If not, Ashley will get you email that to you. I think it's your turn, Kate.
That's it? All right.
Well, I'll help you out with this next one, possibly.
All right. We are moving into our death investigations, and I know Chief usually likes to say this, just as a reminder, but Every murder is a homicide, but every homicide is not a murder. So we'll just let that marinate for a moment. As you look at this slide, you'll see a total of 9 homicide investigations. There is an asterisk here, which I will get to, as well as 3 of those being justified. We have a total of 6 murder investigations. That note indicates that there are 2 additional homicide victims that are not counted in our investigations because those are from OISs that we were involved in, so other agencies handled those investigations. So when you look at the total number of victims of homicide, we have 11. We handled 9 investigations, so I think that that's clear. Again, we have a total of 6 murder victims. If you look at the previous slide, it says 5. That is because that was 5 murders by gunfire. We had 1 that did not involve a firearm. Looking at our overall total death investigations, we sit at 12. So that includes any suspicious death that our investigators look into and work. And again, a total of 6 murder victims. Moving into Crime Stoppers data, we've got, and this is just for quarter 2, it does not include Q1. We had a total of 63 cases that were resolved because of Crime Stoppers tips. A total of $118,110 in stolen property or narcotics recovered. We authorized $11,550 in rewards, with a total of 49 arrests and 9 firearms being recovered due to Crime Stoppers tips. Unfortunately, this is one of those areas that we don't get to brag about a lot of times because we want to make sure that our tipsters are completely anonymous and we do not put them in danger, so it's hard for us to bring this data to the public other than during these quarterly updates. We have one announcement from Michiana Crime Stoppers. We are going to have our fall shredding event. It's a little earlier this year, but it will be on Saturday, August 29th, and this will be over at Southgate Crossing, just outside of South Bend, over at in Elkhart, off of the 20 bypass and State Road 19. So hopefully we can see some South Bend residents over there.
All right, getting started with our strategies. I have about the next 14 slides or so I'm going to try to pace myself and not talk too fast. I know I get to rambling too quickly sometimes, so bear with me. Up first, traffic enforcement and safety strategies. This is an important strategy for us. We, about 3.5 years ago, took a serious look at what we needed to do to improve because our traffic stop numbers were significantly low. And also hearing from council members, residents, individuals at the Mayor's Night Out, events that we host here when we do monthly stat updates. We're hearing from the community and they wanted us to do something more about dangerous driving. In looking at what we are currently doing, it just wasn't feasible for us to increase our traffic stop numbers. So we determined we need to add more officers to each of our 3 patrol shifts. So we beefed up the patrol shifts and they run traffic on their shift. So every day, each shift has officers assigned to traffic and they're working on the complaints that we have coming in and or the worst intersections for collisions based on the previous year. As you can see in the bar graph, we had a significant increase in quarter 2, up about 30% compared to quarter 2 of last year. So seeing a nice improvement in both quarter 1 and quarter 2. The next slide gives us an update on collisions. And the first part of that slide, you can see we've had an increase of about 10% in total collisions. Likely due to January and February, we had a real winter this year. So snowy, wet street conditions. We saw a lot of traffic crashes in January and February, and that has that number pushed up. Happy to see that the injury rate down is low. Happy to see that the injury rate is down, however, and that also speaks to the fact that we had small fender benders through those January and February months. I did see a decrease in the fatality rate, which is also great to see. And then one more slide about traffic enforcement and our safety strategy there. You can see our 5 worst intersections through quarter 2 there in the top. More importantly is the section below that I look closely at. We're looking at the worst intersections in 2025 for collisions. Comparing those with how we're doing in quarter 2 of 2026, we saw a decrease in 4 of those categories. So we know what we're doing is currently working and we're going to look to beef up those numbers when we can, when we have the staffing to do so. And then moving on to Fusus, that's the technology that runs our real-time crime center. All of our officers in patrol also have access to Fusus. That is for city-owned cameras, partnering cameras through businesses, and also LPRs. And also within Fusus, we have things like ShotSpotter for response for the officers, and then Resource Router as well, one of our other strategies we use. So Fusus is used by everyone, primarily, on the next slide, by our real-time crime center. You can see the usages by the real-time crime center. First quarter 175, we're down a little compared to first quarter at 170, but we are up compared to quarter 2 of last year. Largely due to staffing. Last year we worked at beefing up the real-time crime center so that we could provide coverage 7 days a week. It's not quite 24 hours a day, but we added 2 new analysts so that we do have 7 days a week coverage, about 18 hours a day. When we have special events, we can also beef that up by having the more staffing that we have. And the next slide gives us some success stories. Not too many details in some of these because some of the cases are ongoing still, but we had a shooting occur with a suspect fleeing. The real-time crime center analyst reviewed footage and identified one of the shooters, providing responding officers with a description and direction of travel. Using the information, a drone officer deployed a drone and located the suspect. Officers arrested the shooter shortly thereafter. So we have DFR, and I'll get to that slide in a little bit, but that's been something that we launched in March, and we're doing a 1-year free pilot. Sorry if I'm talking too much about DFR before we get there, but this is a significant slide for us because we're reviewing to see if DFR is worth us keeping into 2027. And we've had several significant apprehensions because of DFR. So we wanted to point that slide out to you. Stabbing occurred and the suspect vehicle fled the area. The real-time crime center again used integrated cameras and LPRs to identify the suspect vehicle and added it to the hot list right away. An analyst then tracked the vehicle through the city as it went through LPR cameras. They relayed that through dispatch to Mishawaka, and the vehicle re-entered our city, and the analysts were able to locate it at a gas station. Officers detained the registered owner for questioning. DFR, which I probably talked a little bit too much about in advance of it, but again, we have 6 crime analysts in the real-time crime center. They're all certified and trained to pilot the DFR. On top of that, we have several officers on each shift who rotate in and out of the real-time crime center to provide extra staffing. It's difficult if we have an analyst off in the real-time crime center for them to use all the functions of the real-time crime center. From Fusus, looking at cameras at businesses or city integrated cameras while piloting as well. So oftentimes you see a patrol officer get assigned to the real-time crime center for that day if we're short staffing in the RTCC. The next slide is a dashboard that is available to everyone. You can get to this through the South Bend Police Department's webpage. On there you can see 790 usages. That's since we started in March, so that's not even year to date. That's just since March. First flight, I believe, Chief, was about the first week of March, thereabouts. Maybe pushed a little bit further, but some significant numbers there is first on scene from the DFR is 30% of the time, and then average reduction in response time is 77%. So what that means is DFR is getting there, and sometimes it can disregard officers if it sees nothing out at the scene. So rather than having 2 or 3 officers continue to respond, if there's no fight in the middle of the street, they can relay that, and maybe just 1 officer goes out, checks the area, clears the call. And that's that 77% reduction in call response. Okay, a couple DFR success stories. Unknown disturbance involving an individual damaging property at residence, and the DFR arrived first on scene, used the thermal imaging on the camera, which is a huge asset, utilizing that thermal camera. We've had several highlights, but I didn't want to have 6 or 7 of them on this slide. So, but this one used thermal imaging and identified suspects throwing items at the residence. The drone tracked the suspect to a wooded area and provided officers with real-time updates on location, direction of travel, leading to the detention. Very important for officers when they're chasing people. Oftentimes we have trouble, people get into wooded areas, even identifying where they're at. And then you have officer safety risks. Is the person laying in wait trying to ambush the officer? So the officers are really taken to DFR and what it provides them from a security standpoint. Another situation, a call for an unknown problem involving a vehicle. Oops, sorry about that. Officers arrived, DFR arrived on scene and located the vehicle and individuals involved, observed a male and female engaged in a physical altercation, and they left the scene. The pilot tracked the vehicle and provided real-time updates to responding officers, including when the suspect drove over the female victim and fled. Officers located and arrested the suspect, and a handgun discarded from the vehicle was recovered. And then moving on to our license plate readers. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this because of some of the heat on LPRs throughout the country. One of the things I want to touch on is when we launched them about 4 to 4.5 years ago, we sat down with City IT and we also sat down with City Legal. Between the three of us, we did a comprehensive review of best practices throughout the country. And City Legal drafted, with our assistance, a policy that we believe is very strict. We wanted to have a strict policy going into it. We knew that LPRs at times were thought of as an invasion of privacy, and so we wanted to make sure our policy was strict and that our protocols were in place. Many departments don't have the protocols to the strictness, I should say, that we do. We have a monthly audit. We have a limited number of officers that are allowed to even use searches in the LPR system. Only investigators, crime analysts, and then lieutenants and captains on patrol shifts. That's as a last resort to have lieutenants and captains on shift, because if something were to happen like an abduction and they want to get searches done right away and try to identify the vehicle involved in an abduction, the real-time crime center may not have any analysts working if it's in the late hours of the night. So we have each shift, lieutenants and captains have the ability to do that search, and they're the only patrol officers that have that. It's crime analysts and investigators that have the primary search features. Along with that audit, officers have to put a case number in. It's random who we review, but we make sure we review each of the officers who have the ability to search throughout the year. Several each month are reviewed by our crime analyst division. They're the ones doing the review on the sworn officers to make sure they're following policy and protocol. If they're not entering a reason why they're doing the search and they don't have a case number, then all of them are forwarded to me. But that is flagged, and we've had an issue before with having to have remedial training because a reason wasn't there but a case number was, just as an example. Not a policy violation, a protocol that we set so that we could keep a strict watch on what officers are doing utilizing LPRs in the city. The next slide gives you a snapshot of our successes. As you can see, we had a huge increase compared to Q1 with 55. And that's an increase overall. We're usually averaging in that 38 to 40 range per quarter. So quite a few successes in the last quarter with LPRs. Two successes that I want to re-highlight because I feel like we just breeze past these. They may be on our social media, or when we're in here I get to speed talking. We don't spend enough time talking about serious cases that may have gone unsolved or uncharged without the use of LPRs. This was a very important one, the homicide of Jeffrey Jones. That homicide occurred in the 700 block of Brookfield, and investigators had very limited leads. We were getting very few tips, and it took a deep dive into looking at LPR footage, looking at what plates were in the area when this crime allegedly occurred, as well as videos from nearby gas stations and other locations, and reported to us from the Detective Bureau and from analysts. This likely goes unsolved if we didn't have LPRs. And the next slide is this very similar situation. As you probably remember, the road rage incident that we had. It was a homicide at Michigan Street, Angela, very similar to the last incident I just talked about, without the use of LPRs in conjunction with city-owned cameras. This likely doesn't get solved, and especially not in the quick time frame in which investigators were able to solve it. And I think last but not least, Resource Router. This is a resource deployment tool for our patrol shift. This allows our officers to spend time in areas where they're needed most. Each shift gets 24 missions, so that's 6 on each of the 4 sides of town. Those are generated by incidents that have occurred primarily in the last 2 weeks, any crime trends that are seen. So it could be burglaries to a garage or several garages in a small area. That's going to generate a mission. That shift, during an 8-hour shift, officers have to spend 45 minutes in that area. They can't spend the 45 minutes all at once. It's broken up into 15-minute segments, so they can spend 15 minutes, but they can't come back for about a half an hour to start a new 15-minute segment of that Resource Router mission. Happy to report that we're still super high, 99.8% completion on those missions. That's about 2 years running that we've been in that 99% range. So definitely know that we are deterring crime and utilizing Resource Router, and also building that trust when residents of the city have crimes occur in their area and then they don't see a police officer for a while, the first person they're calling is the chief's office or the mayor's office to ask why we haven't seen an officer. Officers are responding to calls and they don't always have time to do a deep dive into the analytics and see where they need to spend their most time. This gives that to them. As soon as they start their shift, it's updated on their computer. Every 8 hours, it updates where they need to spend time. And that is all that I have.
All right, before we open it up to questions regarding this presentation and maybe some other things, I just want to touch on a couple events. Some of those we talked about at the beginning of the presentations. A reminder, National Night Out next week, and then the following week, our Citizens Police Academy will begin. We are continuing our monthly community crime stat meetings, the second Wednesday of the month, so have one coming up on August 12th. And then something we haven't talked about yet because we wanted to get through these first couple events, the back to school cookout will be happening Friday, August 14th at LaSalle Park. This is going to be the first time that we're over on that east side Notre Dame area, so we're excited to connect with neighbors over there as well. So we will go ahead. Do you want to talk about more success stories? Do you want to go to Q&A, Chief Skib? We have a couple more.
Oh, I think those are supposed to be
Yeah, we'll just go to
just
Q&A.
issued out.
All right, we'll just you can check those in your presentation. So we will open it up to questions.
Before the questions, just a couple clarifications, and I know you all have been here enough to know, but maybe some of the viewers have not. When Dan talked about the traffic stops, just to be clear, those are self-initiated traffic stops. They are not call-related. That's a whole different. We don't keep the tabs that you ask for, and the reason I say this is because the two things, when a survey went out a couple years ago, it wasn't just council, it wasn't just the mayor's office, it was all of our residents received the survey. Simultaneously, we did one within the police department. We wanted to compare what the community thought should be done and the officers thought should be done. Coincidentally, when those two unknown results came back, because the officers didn't know the community was doing it and vice versa, the top two came back to us and they were identical. Number one was us to deal with violence and gun violence, and number two was traffic. So that is why, Dan, that's why we're keeping the tabs on the traffic stops itself. That's why we incorporated the traffic cars within each shift rather than have a separate entity or a separate division on its own. Maybe someday we can get back to that, but right now, it's not just the traffic cars themselves that are assigned, because there's crashes and things that are involved that they are contending with. But it's every officer has red and blue lights, they can make traffic stops. So that is still a work in progress, but the assignments, you saw the results of those. OIS, Captain Miller mentioned, I know you know, but again, your viewers may not, it's officer involved shooting. And then Dan briefly touched on the flock LPR policy. What Dan didn't tell you was right now we're in the process of a state law regarding flock LPR or similar devices. They copied and pasted most of our policy and procedures within that state law. We actually had a meeting just a few weeks ago here with a bunch of area agencies from throughout the northern half of Indiana who had input on this as to how it's going to be presented in committee for that state law change. And I will tell you that Flock themselves have, based on what we've done, have added measures nationally within their system, some of the requirements that we've already done well in advance of this. So this is simply a matter of paying it forward to other agencies that when it comes to auditing, reviews, whatever the case may be, that there is something foundational that they can go to and should be going to make sure that nefarious things are not happening within their agencies like we are. And then I know there's last night, so I'm sure there's going to be questions with that as well.
Well, before we get to last night, can you elaborate on what would be in that law? You said it largely adopts your policy, but what are some of the highlights of that?
It has to do with storage, a lot of it, and then the auditing measures that need to be required. I hand wrote that in when they passed their when they passed the proposal around to have input on. It's in draft stage. It's with attorneys and stuff right now, including our city legal, county city legal, or county's county legal. They will have input as well on that, but you know, we have a pretty good model that nationally that seems to be being somewhat followed now, again with Flock themselves incorporating some of the measures we've taken. to have a required case number and to have a required reasoning within that case number of why you're doing that. Because I know that rumors, whether true or not, are out there. It didn't come from our agency, though, I can tell you that.
I have a follow-up question about in regards to the flock cameras. So, like you were mentioning, you need a case number and then also a reason for requesting that information. What is your protocol for when things are requested and they get flagged? What's the protocol for that officer? And then are you guys looking to change that or make it more strict going forward?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, like I said, 4.5 years ago when we first started this, there was a learning curve. So the protocols we set in place, we saw occasionally something get flagged where it didn't put a case number or didn't put a reason, or vice versa. Something was entered but didn't follow through everything we asked for within the protocol. So remedial training took place. After that remedial training, they sat down and they were warned that from here on forward, you would get written up for this and there could be an internal investigation. So we didn't have the problems after that. And like Chief said, Flock actually plugged in that you can't move on with a search without putting those elements in there now. That was something that they followed up on basically what we were already doing.
And I think to finish up on that, Dan alluded to 4.5 years, which is true from that part, but we've had LPR since at least 2013. So those were vehicle mounted, patrol vehicle mounted license plate reader systems. So we've been doing this for a long time, and we've had, other than one, maybe two minor incidents of not incorporating both of those before anybody knew you shouldn't be incorporating those. But still, even after we put that in place, we went backward to our requirements to look to make sure that these things were not happening, and we didn't have any of those issues.
All right, let's talk about last night.
I'm gonna add one small
Sure.
detail to that. So Chief Skibins and I were kind of just going back and forth to provide an example of some of those red flags. So when detectives get called in for an incident, whether, for instance, last night perhaps, and they may not know the case number right away because they're involved in investigating the crime, quite frequently, that's what we saw as some of those red flags, where they would put in investigation, but they wouldn't have a case number or vice versa. So it wasn't nefarious activities that were happening. It was just in the moment trying to move forward with an investigation, get that information searched quickly. So we are now able to get that information much quicker, and they know that they need to put that in to Flock while they're searching those.
So overnight, there was a lot of incidents in the city. I think that's going to be a major news story today, and I'm wondering if you want to address that.
Yeah, so there were, in just over an hour, there were 4 firearm-related incidents throughout the city. The first one we had was a person on Nims and Bendix, or around that area, was apparently, and I don't want to get too much into it because I know it's still an investigative process, although we did make an arrest on that based on probable cause and a little bit more, because we did find evidence of, and we did have witnesses come forward, but we did make an arrest on that, that a person was apparently randomly just walking around firing at passing vehicles. That's what the initial was. I'm reluctant to release all of those details because I know there is still further witness interviews that are occurring with that, but an arrest was made in that. The next one we had was in the 1800 block of Johnson Street where somebody was shot. We're still trying to work out the details on that, and just a few minutes after that, or not much long after that, we had the Colfax and Martin Luther King Drive incident. We have all parties, I think all parties, maybe 1 or 2 we're still trying to look for to interview from a witness perspective with that, but those mentioned there are no longer, they're not, those were focused on intended. Did you want to say more? Well, before I do the last one, which was 31 in the bypass, there was a call of shots fired. We found no evidence of anything occurring out there. Nobody had come forward other than the caller themselves, and we really didn't have a lot of anything we were able to follow up on. We did do a thorough search on that. But within that 60 whatever minute time frame of their use your imagination, you know, we have 20 some officers working. 3 of those incidents occurred on the northwest side of town slash the right around the downtown area. So the officers were literally trying to, and then we also have the hospital that was involved, and there's a whole sequence of events that occurs when that happens. Hospitals go on lockdown, the staff least, patients on all floors, most are affected by these lockdowns. So this was an entire, you had fire department and you had other entities that were involved in trying to help us out as well. So did you, I know you wanted to say. Maybe.
Yeah, just briefly. So just to add to what Chief said, of the 3 confirmed firearm incidents, they do not appear to be connected at all, and do not believe that there's any ongoing threats. Individuals have either been arrested, identified, or we are quickly following up on locating them. So don't expect, we may be able to have an update later today, but we'll see how the investigation unravels.
It'll be on our Facebook page when we have the resolutions.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more. I know that you're aware of a protest happening outside headquarters today, later this afternoon. Do you want to respond at all to the concerns of the family of Joanne Bates who plan to demonstrate later?
There'd be no reason to. You all have seen everything that we've put out, and the allegations are typical of whoever's spearheading this protest, but it's a right to protest.
In regards to the NIMS shooting, it seems just really terrifying to think that somebody was randomly firing at cars. I know you said that there's no ongoing threat to the public, but that to me is like nightmare fuel. So I don't know how we can further, I don't know, reassure folks. Did you get a lot of calls on that? Or?
Well, he was arrested.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know much more reassurance. Just remember there's other parts of this process in the judicial system. So it's us, there's prosecutors, there's judges, and there's a corrections involved. So as we typically do, we did our part. Did you want, yeah, I know you were saying something there.
I think another reassuring thing that we can express to our community is the fact that generally speaking, and more often than not, incidents are isolated, and it rarely is stranger on stranger. Those are rare when they do happen. Obviously, we saw one last night, so it is possible for it to happen, but most often incidents are known individuals, so a victim knows the suspect, witnesses, whatever it may be. So hopefully that will be a little more comforting.
Yeah, so essentially that incident is extremely rare.
Yes.
Cool.
And there were firearms obviously involved in every one of those, and officers responded to every one of those. And you just heard the outcome of every one of those. So, you know, for the incidents, God forbid, when they do happen in that 1 second that an officer has to make a life and death decision, those are things that do occur. So please keep that in mind, that those happen. Officers are human beings, and they're put in often no-win situations. Yet I have hundreds, if not thousands, of situations where we did win. Everybody won.
So with this, there were obviously multiple incidents last night. I mean, obviously we just went over the numbers. I mean, is this something that you think is just a blip of the radar, or?
I've addressed this before, and I mean, there's no way for us to predict human emotion. And 99.9 whatever percent of these incidents involve emotion. That's exactly what it is. We can't predict them, and unfortunately, we can only respond to them when they occur. However, if other people know that something bad's about to happen, something's been brewing, and they don't contact us knowing that, then shame on them, because we can intervene. We don't always have to make arrests. But we can absolutely stop something before it does. And on that note that Andy Kate alluded to, just want to be clear with and there's still an internal investigation on both officer-involved shootings that we were involved in. The implication is, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that? And the mobile crisis team, Stanfield and Howard, that was a totally separate call, had nothing to do with this whatsoever. And they are not coming out on an armed individual. I don't know how we can be any more clear, but it comes up every single time. They are not coming out on an armed individual, period. We have to. And most of the time, unfortunately, when these are happening, every one of us are nestled snugly in our beds when the cops are out here having to deal with this.
And I don't want to get too much into the analytics here, but when you look at the range of gun violence, there's unfortunately the things you can't predict or necessarily know where it's going to happen. Domestic issues where it could be a murder or murder-suicide. Those could happen. Those are, as Chief said, a lot of things going on there. Hard to predict, hard to really have a strategy to get on top of that, other than general help of lifting families up. Then there's the random acts, which are kind of the ones on stranger, which are very rare. Those are very hard to predict as well, because they're rare, thankfully. And then there's the group violence, and that's why we focus on that, because those are correlated. When there's a group violence incident, there's more likely then to be retaliation from the other group, and so those are correlated. Like if there's violence here, there's more likely to be violence following that. These isolated incidents don't have a correlation to future violent incidents, I think is the simplest way to put it.
I had one last question, just unrelated to last night. I know you already talked about recruitment and hiring, but those numbers are looking good compared to where we were last year. But do you guys have an overall goal or something you're working toward? And then is there a difficulty hiring at this time?
Our overall goal is to maintain in the 250s. We're budgeted for 257 for 2026, so ideally to be in the 250s consistently. We get there and then we lose a few to retirements and we build back up, and so that's consistent over the last 3 or 4 years, and that's why I said we're comfortable at 248. Ideally, yeah, if I was at 252, I'd be that much more happy, but what was the other part of that question? Sorry. Difficulties in getting...
Yeah.
We just had our prospect day and we had 60 individuals show up, which is an increase from last time. There was about 48 the previous prospect day, so the results are a little different this time because the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy changed the agility test. And so we have more people coming out of this prospect day than usual. I think it's at 26, the captain told me, from training and recruitment. And in the past, it's a little bit lower because we do lose a few people through the agility test. The agility test won't be ran until afterwards because this go-round, starting August 1st, it's an individual, basically like an obstacle course, a set of obstacles that you have to go through, and it has to be ran by one at a time. And it takes 3 to 4 minutes to achieve that. So if we ran 60 people through it, we'd burn 4 hours of our prospect day right there. So we're going to do that after the backgrounds and all the other stuff that go with the hiring process. So yeah, as of right now, I feel like we're doing well with recruitment, and we saw a large number of people show up to prospect day.
And just for perspective, although we have the allotted numbers right around that 250 mark, operating wise, it never happens that way. You have sick, injured, FMLA, vacation, personal days, military, and other factors you have to consider when we do not have the personnel. So 230s, mid to upper 230s is what we typically operate at based on that. And hopefully we won't get any more officers hurt to add to that count. But those are, it's always a weird ebb and flow, but it's a consistent weird ebb and flow when it comes to that.
So when I'm looking here at the gun violence snapshot, obviously it shows that it's, down over the same period last year. I mean, just, are there any numbers overall crime? Is that up, down? I mean, is there anything that you have for that?
Part 1 crime last month, and I'll be doing it again this month, this next month, because I just did it in July with the Board of Safety. That we saw, again, it was an 8% decrease in Part 1 crimes. We saw an increase, and that was due to a DOJ FBI change when it came to classifications of burglary, residents and non-residents. And to give you an example, if a vacant house gets broke into 3 times in the same day, but several hours apart, that's 3 separate reports. So that count obviously went up, burglary resident and non-resident, which means garages and things like that, sheds. Those did increase. That gave us the increase in overall Part 1 crimes. That was for 2 months straight, but that has steadied out, and we saw in the last presentation was an 8% decrease in those Part 1 crimes, which has been consistent for the last 5 years.
Absolutely, and you were talking about how, you guys, helped make some national policy regarding flock. I mean, just talk about your guys' approach to, stopping crime here. Is this something that you say we're at the forefront leaders, or, are you also looking at other cities saying, hey, they're doing this, maybe we can draw off of that and continue to get better as we lead the fight to stop crime?
Yeah, so absolutely, we look around nationally for best practices. What we hadn't done for the almost 38 years that I've been here, we haven't been the trendsetter. And we're not doing that as if it's a race. We just happen to be really good at what we do, and even better people doing the best that we can do. That has allowed us to pay that forward. Some agencies do, some agencies don't, but we're always the one to pay it forward because, like the mayor said, and I've said all along, anything that we can do to get any one of these categories, especially the ones you don't get a do-over on when that trigger's pulled, to keep those at 0, that's what we're going to do. It's not for our benefit, it's for our community's benefit. It's justice for victims and justice for our community.
Absolutely, and is there any, I assume no update on the condition of the person shot on the Colfax incident?
We had an early morning one. I don't have one as of about 6 hours. So this morning was stable but critical.
And I'm sorry, that was which person?
That was Colfax and Martin Luther King.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other updates on people who are injured?
The victim from Johnson is non-life-threatening, stable.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.